Welcome and thank you for listening to the Sales Maven Show. I'm your host, Nikki Rausch. I am your own personal sales maven here to offer you tips, strategies, and techniques to master your sales conversations. Today, I'm going to be sharing the 7 lessons I wish somebody had shared with me at the start of my sales career and how these relate and have served me to boost my business today. All right, so these are those lessons that, oh my gosh, if I had just known these things, I swear it would have saved me so much time, heartache, and definitely some commission checks. So, the hope here is that in sharing these, whether you find yourself selling to corporate clients, your, B2B clients or selling B2C clients, you're running your own business, maybe you're doing all of the things that hopefully by sharing them with you today, or at least one of the 7 lessons, will give you some idea or spur something for you to maybe take some action, do something different so that you don't have to learn the lessons the hard way like I did. Okay. So here is my first one, and it has to do with loyalty in sales isn't what you think it is. And I will say, as a young sales professional, I said many times, I wish I had $1 for every time I said it. I used to say, there's 2 things you really need to do. You need to take care of your company and you need to take care of your clients. And those 2 things will take care of you. So you'll never have to worry about yourself. Mm, not true. Man, did I learn those lessons the hard way. That in reality, I found through my sales career that thinking that my company was always going to take care of me because I always did right by it just turned out to not be true. Now, taking care of your clients, also, as much as I want that one to be true, it just isn't. It isn't because there's so many choices. Clients' priorities change, things change, people change in positions. And so when you think, gosh, I've always taken such good care of this particular client, therefore I will always earn their business, just has not been the case for me and for many of my clients. People who just, they kind of put, that saying, like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I had a client years ago who it was like 80% of her business came from this one client, which in some ways, it's like, wow, that's amazing because it was a ton of business. But then things happened. There were some big shifts in the market and also in the industry. And they went from having like 80% of their business come from this client to being less than like 2%. And it happened very quickly. And it caused her to have to go through a ton of layoffs, reposition her company, reposition her offers. Now she has maintained and her business has come back. But man, there were some years there, like lean, really tough lessons to learn. I've had my own experience with this. So here's what I think really that it isn't about blind loyalty and thinking that you're going to get that in return. It's really about thinking ahead and diversifying a little bit as to where the money is coming in the business. That is one of the lessons. Or thinking like, oh, well, this person has been with me for this long and I can kind of count on their business. Like, I just have found that to not be true. And especially with what I'm doing now, it has served me because I know that clients will transition out of my business. I have clients that have worked with me for years, and I have clients who work with me for a period of time, leave, and then something shifts in their business or an offer or something, and then they'll come back, work with me for a little bit, and then leave, go off, do other things, which I'm so glad that I learned this lesson eventually, but I learned it in my sales career and not in like with Sales Maven because I don't get overly attached, right? Like, it doesn't hurt my feelings. I don't count on that business. I know that if somebody is paying me, like that could go away tomorrow. So it does force me to be thinking about Am I bringing new leads into the business? Am I bringing new buyers into the business? Because I have a really great repeat buy rate in my business, but I also know that I've got to be bringing in a fresh group of buyers. And that has been a real focus, especially how hard things have been in the last year for my business in particular, and that translates into what's going on in my clients' businesses as well, is just bringing in some fresh new buyers. And so that means being creative. So always maintain your integrity, deliver at the highest level so that people get the best possible experience, but don't count on that because it's it's probably going to be at your detriment. I know it's been at mine. All right, so that's lesson 1. Here's lesson 2. I had a sales manager that used to always say this, like to the point where it was annoying, but he used to always say, "What have you done for me lately?" And man, that was such a great, hard lesson because I mean, this was back when I was closing multi-million dollar deals for the company that I was working for. And my boss was still like, I don't care what you sold last month. I care what you're selling this month. Like what's happening? What have you done for me lately? And I will say at that point in my career, I still hadn't really kind of got this lesson because I used to get really frustrated and annoyed by my boss saying that. But the thing that really helped here is that it doesn't matter how successful my business was last month or last year, that I have to be thinking about what am I doing this month? What am I doing to set myself up for, the 30, 60, 90 days from now for business coming in, and constantly looking at that. And I find that one of the mistakes that often happens is in our businesses is, and my clients say this a lot. They're like, well, I had all this business and I was really busy. So I kind of stopped marketing, or I just stopped doing any kind of prospecting activities. I haven't emailed my list in a really long time. And those mistakes, man, they're really hard ones to learn. The what have you done for me lately? And I will say, what really taught me this lesson was, and man, this is a hard lesson. And it's hard for me to even share it because it's kind of like it's always been something that I've been embarrassed by. But I went to work for this company. It wasn't a great experience. I didn't work for them for a very long time, but um I had closed the largest deal in the history of the organization that I was working for. And there were a lot of red flags, some things going on with this company. I know I've shared some of these stories. I won't say what the company is, but I closed the largest deal in the history to a very prestigious client. Like just even being able to say that you sold to this client was it's still like, honestly, it's still even in my bio because it's a pretty impressive opportunity. I closed it. Like they wouldn't even been on the radar of this company, and they fired me within weeks of closing that deal. They thought they could get somebody who could produce more than I could. I think they went through in the next like 12 months, they went through 2 or 3 more sales reps in my territory after they fired me. I was super humiliated and embarrassed by it. Man, there's so many lessons I learned in that particular experience. I'm not going to go into them today, but this idea of what have you done for me lately, like it didn't even matter to them that I'd brought in this opportunity. They had never done a deal this big. Just didn't matter, didn't count. So, where I bring this into my business now is thinking about my momentum, thinking about my own consistency, visibility, the value, the follow up that I have to do with clients, the like reach outs, the prospecting, the marketing that I cannot count on. You can't like rest on any of your former successes. And I think sometimes if you've never been in sales before, especially a commission sales job, like you don't really get this lesson until it's pretty late. So I'm grateful. I'm very grateful for that particular lesson of the what have you done for me lately? Because it doesn't matter how big of a sales month I have or sales year I have. I just know like it doesn't matter. Like I'm always thinking about, okay, What am I going to be promoting next month? What am I going to promote the month after that? Because I got to keep the sales have got to keep coming in the door. So, really great lesson. And I think as entrepreneurs, if you take a little bit of that into your business, it will serve you because you won't just get complacent. You won't rest on like, well, there's money in the bank. So, or I had this big sale, or I have this new client that signed on. Not that you shouldn't celebrate your successes. I don't mean that in any way. But the what have you done for me lately to keep that momentum going and be thinking about, because with any activity that you're going to do, it sometimes takes 60, 90 or more days before you actually kind of see any real results, especially with prospecting and business building. Like it takes time. So you got to keep it going because 3 months from now, if you didn't do any prospecting, you might not have any new clients coming in the door. That's a problem. So think about that. Here is lesson number 3. Man, I wish I'd learned this one. And it has to do with in sales that your compensation packages are going to change and they're going to change often. And luckily I did learn this lesson, but I really didn't learn it until I became a sales manager. So I was a sales rep for a company for many years, and it would get frustrating because you would think like, okay, I got this figured out. I know how to maximize my commission structure. And then, every at least once a year, the company would change the comp plan and the way that you got paid and what you got paid on. And so there was this learning curve of like, okay, so now you got to work out the kinks, figure out like how to maximize your commission checks. And when I became a sales manager, because that was one of my like coming up with a new compensation plan and really understanding how we were compensating our sales team and what I needed to do to drive efforts. And, my sales reps at the time would be so frustrated and, people would threaten to quit over changing their commission structures and then you'd have the reps that would sandbag. That means they're like holding back their orders, to try to boost their bonus amount or whatever. And so learning like how to make compensation plans so that people didn't sandbag, like all the stuff that went about that. Now, how I tie this and how I use this now in my business is this idea of pricing and packaging and being able to pivot my offers so that they do stay profitable. And one of the things I think as a salesperson that I did learn this before I started Sales Maven, sometimes maybe I still struggle with it from time to time, is that my offers cannot have my ego attached to it. And a lot of times when I'm working with clients and they're struggling, to make money, they're struggling to, get people to say yes to their offers. A lot of times when you dig in, what can sometimes be in their way is their ego. And it's like, well, this is all of my expertise. This is my IP. Like I have to sell it for this, dollar amount. Otherwise, somehow that's me not standing in my place of worth. Um, and I don't have that. I'm not attached to that. Like, yes, it's my IP. And yes, I know I'm really good at what I do. I know when my clients implement the things that I teach that they make money off of the lessons that they learn from me and the advice that I give and the guidance that I offer, but I'm not attached ego-wise to it. And so it allows for me to repackage and pivot my offers and price things accordingly. Because maybe something that made me a lot of money, a few years back, I'm happy to now take that thing if it's no longer generating money, even though I put my blood, sweat, and tears into it. I'm happy to use it as an incentive, as a bonus. I'm happy to tie it into another offer. And so that has been a really great lesson about understanding like comp plans change and how I've brought it into my business today is that also means that I need to be able to pivot my packaging, my pricing, and the kind of offers that I'm putting out, which I think has taught me to test things and try things. I know a lot of times people will get caught up of like, I don't know what's going to happen. So I'm not sure if I should do this. And I'm always like, just do it and see what happens. And that's what I do. So it's worked overall. I'm coming up on my 12th year in business. So I feel like it's worked. Has it always worked? No. But I've learned some great lessons along the way of not getting tied into that I need to make a certain amount of money on a certain thing or somehow like my worth is attached to it. No, it's like, what will people pay? That's what I'm going to charge. And if I don't know what they'll pay, I'm going to test it in the market and see. I'm not going to be attached like ego wise to anything. Okay. That was lesson 3. Here's lesson 4. This is a big one. This this really kind of is almost the crux of everything that I teach is that relationships kind of trump everything else in business. Now, did I know this when I started out in sales? No, I had no idea. I just thought, be really good, understand your product, understand the selling process, and, it was all going to be fine. But what I really learned is that if I could build really strong relationships with my clients, then doors would continue to open. They would continue to take my call. And it didn't really matter what it said on my business card because my business card could change. I could work for a different company and I would still be able to open doors and get my product in front of people. And this is something I remember when I worked for a company for a long time. I had a lot of success at this particular manufacturer that I worked for a long time. And I was very known in the industry. Like a lot of people would associate me, like somehow, like my name was associated with this company. Like we were almost attached, right? Like as far as a branding goes, which in some ways was really good. And then when I left, because I had spent so much time building really strong relationships, some of my biggest accounts, it's not that they left the company that I was working for because I never went to competitors. That was a decision that I made. So I never went to a competitive product company, even though I was offered many jobs at competitors because I'd had these strong relationships. But I was able to open up opportunities. So I know um, one company I went to work for, my largest account at the previous company, like the product that I was selling didn't really even make sense as far as a product in their lineup, but yet they I had such a strong relationship with me they or with them that they continued to look for opportunities that they could bring me in and still work with them. And so this company I went to work for who like this large account that I mean, this particular account was doing like $33 million a year in business just with me. Um, just in my territory that I managed for them. And so when I went to work at the next company, and again, didn't really have a product line that fit in with their kind of category. And the company I went to work for, they'd never even heard of this company that was buying from me. And they ended up becoming in their top 3 largest um, customers. And it all had to do with the relationships that I had there. And then the company after that that I went to work for specifically recruited me because of my relationship with this client. And so again, they were, they had a little bit of a relationship with my customer, but not much. And they wanted to really increase their business there. And so they did. My customer became their largest customer. And I only worked for that company for a year. Like opened up so many opportunities for the company that I went to work for. And it was all based on those relationships. And then when I left the industry and I started Sales Maven, I thought, well, I'm doing something totally different. And, there's not going to be opportunity to work with this account, but I'm so glad that I, built these relationships. My customer, again, ended up hiring me to provide their sales training. They were like, we want you to come back and train our sales reps. And so for many years, they would fly me in every time they would hire new salespeople, which was almost every month. They had a huge sales team of like 90 people across the country. So every time they would hire some new people, they would fly me in to spend the day with their sales team doing the training that I still teach to this day to, the people in the Sales Maven Society. So like, and it was thousands and thousands of dollars that really kind of helped my business stay afloat in the first couple years. So those relationships, they really do matter. And you just never know what relationship is going to open the door. So I always say, like, make sure that you are really valuing the relationships that you have and taking good care of them. Because even after, as sales maven doing this sales training for this company, for my large customer, many of their people left and went on to other organizations and still hired me. So it's crazy when I look back at how much money has come into the business, all I can track back, and how much money, frankly, has just like I can track back in my own income that I've made over the years, many, many years worth, tracking back to building really strong relationships with this particular customer and just always doing my best to take care of them at the highest level. To the point where I think they used to do this huge meeting every year for their whole company, and they'd bring all their vendors in, and they would do vendor awards, and they would award their company, like their vendors as a company, they would win certain awards. I was the only sales person they ever brought up on stage and gave an individual award to. Now, my company won the award that year as like their best vendor, but then they singled me out and brought me up as being their best rep. And they worked with hundreds of reps. And just that relationship and all that it has done and opened up, the doors that has opened up, has just been unbelievable. And it was really just about delivering at the highest level. It was never, I never had to reach out and even ask them for anything. They just would look for opportunities. And some of their people still to this day, like, will go work at a new company and they're still in sales and they'll sign up for different offers that I put out into the market. They're on my email list. Like, some of them even listen to the podcast. Like, I'm so grateful for these relationships and these doors that continue to open for me and for the business, um, just by building strong relationships. So I just think that is one of those lessons that you just like, relationships, they really matter. And this is why I would say, like, relationship first before the sale, because even if they weren't buying, and they're really not, like, they've actually been bought out now a couple times. So I don't do sales training for them anymore. And most of all of my contacts there have left and moved on to other companies, and which is totally fine, right? Because they still look for ways to open doors for me. But the idea is those doors just wouldn't have opened. So when I think about my relationships now in the industry that I'm now in, right, of like entrepreneurship and business, like really making an effort to keep relationships intact. And you just don't know where people are going to be or what they're going to do. And they tend to go back to the people that they know, like, and trust. And if you can be that person for them, it is going to continue to open doors. So this is why I also talk about your reputation and, how much that matters. And, I did a podcast not too long ago about like repairing your reputation. Like, these things matter. And I wish somebody had pulled me aside, my younger self, and just said, like, Nikki, spend most of your time building strong relationships because it'll open doors that you just can't even imagine. And if I could go back and start sooner, I would have. So maybe if this lesson is helpful and you take that away, just think about what relationships can you build. And it isn't always about what can people do for you. Oftentimes it's what can you do for them. And then when there's an opportunity to reciprocate, they will, right? Reciprocity is a real thing. All right, lesson 5. Lesson 5 is promises without signatures mean nothing. I had a sales manager that used to always say, until the money's in the bank, doesn't count as a sale. Until the check is cleared, doesn't count as a sale. And again, really hard lesson. I think as an early young sales rep, when I would get super excited about like, this is gonna, be this done deal and, this is gonna happen. And, I'm gonna close this $700,000 deal. And then there was no, excuse me, there was no signature, there was no contract in place. And then they changed their mind for whatever reason, right? Some of it, something like totally outside my control, nothing I did wrong, nothing I could have done better, but the sale didn't count. And so now I do bring this into my business now because unless the person has actually signed up for the program or paid money, I don't count that. I cannot tell you how many times I start working with people and they'll be like, oh, well, on the books, I have like $30,000 worth of business like about to close. And then when I dig into that and ask questions, I'm like, those are not, those don't count. Those don't count as deals. Like they haven't really like what is going to actually close of that. I'm not trying to like if you're thinking that right now in your business, I'm not saying that it's not going to close, but it only counts when it does close. And this is why, and this is how I bring this into my business now. And oftentimes until somebody starts working with me, they don't even understand how to do this, but it is a game changer. This is why when I get somebody on a call and they express interest, I immediately go for the close and I give them the opportunity to sign up right then. I cannot tell you how many times people are like, Nikki, I can't take payment on the call. And I'm like, yeah, you can. And if you don't, you're potentially gonna lose money because you didn't close on the call. Not because they don't want to buy from you, but because they're gonna move on, they're gonna forget, they're gonna get distracted with other things. So your job is to close. Doesn't mean you have to be pushy or aggressive. You don't. I'm not. And I close on calls. So this is why I teach people like you have to close on call or at least attempt to secure payment so that you're not chasing people later because they said they were going to buy and then they never do. I have a client who she consistently is like, this person said they were going to buy from me and then they didn't. And now, I'm all flustered and like flabbergasted about it. And it's like, well, did you offer to close on the call? Well, no. Well, okay. So this is a common theme. And if you're having this in your business, this is not me judging you. And I'm not trying to be harsh here, but come on. Like, what is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. If you have these kind of deals that are sitting out there, like it is time to learn how to do this in a way that is comfortable and you can be confident in the conversation, but you got to close because the signature doesn't count until like they've paid money, till the credit card has been run or there's, money in your account. All right. Here's lesson 6. Run your accounts, this was, I learned this again, run your accounts as if it's your own business. I did not really learn this lesson until I went from the dealer side selling to end users until I went to the corporate, like manufacturer side. And I started working with a lot of different salespeople, like hundreds of salespeople that I supported in the marketplace. I would go out and do ride days with them and demonstrations and all the stuff that went with that. And I can still to this day like come up with a list of 10 of what I thought were the best salespeople in the industry that I was working in. These people were incredible. They were superstars in their companies. They were making a lot of money doing what they were doing. And the one thing that I can say that differentiated them from other salespeople who were also skilled at what they did, they knew their products, but the 10 best people always ran it as if it was their own business. Now, even though they were working for someone else, they just treated it like it was their own business and they had to advocate for it like it was their own business. So here's the lesson that this has brought into Sales Maven, into my own business, and I'm super grateful for it. And I try to pass this on as often as possible because one of the things that people often say to me is it's hard to sell my own services, Nikki. Like I feel weird or I don't want to be salesy or aggressive or pushy and so I struggle with it. And I would say like you have to treat your business like it's your baby. And just how you would advocate for your own kid if they were being abused or if they were being ignored, Like you would stand up as a parent and be like, hey, hey, wait, this isn't okay, right? You would advocate for it. And you have to learn how to advocate for your business. And so it has to be an entity outside of you. If you have yourself, it's like, I'm so wrapped up in my business and it's all me all the time. And so my feelings come into the business. Like, no, it's time to separate that. And you have to start seeing your business as an entity outside of you, and you have to advocate for it. Treat it like it's its own living, breathing thing. You got to feed it. You got to take care of it. And that means you have to advocate for it. That has been just one of those lessons. I wish everybody that I got to work with like knew that lesson sooner. All right, here's number 7. Here's the last one, and then we'll bring this to a close. The absolute game changer, superpower in sales is improving my communication skills. When I started in sales, I will say that I had a little bit of like, this is my style, take me or leave me. Like, this is who I am. I was pretty confident, I will say, but yet my style didn't always work. And so when I started studying neurolinguistic programming and I started to learn that the meaning of my communication was based on the response I get, and my all-time favorite quote, which I say all the time and printed everywhere on all my workbooks and everything, which is blessed are the flexible, for you shall not be bent out of shape, or for they shall not be bent out of shape. Learning how to add flexibility, learning how to improve my overall communication skills has been the absolute game changer. So, man, if I could go back to me in my early 20s when I was starting in my sales career and be like, girl, invest in communication skills, learn them, hone them, because I really didn't start doing that until I was in my 30s and was really kind of late 30s. And people started seeing a difference, and I started seeing a difference. And now I'm shocked, honestly. But people often say to me, oh, Nikki, you just know how to say things. You just know how to, like, you say it in a way that it sounds so great. Or I'm like, people say the nicest compliments to me. And I'm not doing that to like pat myself on the back. I'm saying, like, I invested years, and a ton of money in learning these skills, and they have been the absolute game changer. And my whole business today is built on this. And the one thing I can say is none of the companies that I worked for in my corporate career would ever invest in sending me to communication courses. Not one of my NLP classes, and it was a lot of money, was ever paid for by any of the corporate companies that I was working for. And they had huge budgets and they spent tons of money. I used to drop $5,000 on taking clients out to dinner. But would my company spend $5,000 for me to learn how to improve my communication skills? No, but I did. I spent that money on myself, and man, it was a great investment, and it's paid off again and again and again, not only in my business, but also in my personal relationships as well. So I will say, investing in your own skill set, like if you're going to invest in anything, invest in you. That's the one lesson. Dang, I wish I had learned it earlier, but it is the lesson that I have taken into my business now. And I've spent so much money. I've invested so much money in coaching and learning how to do this entrepreneurial journey, and learning from people that know how to do things that I don't know how to do. I will, I hope, I always say I'm a lifelong learner, that I will always make, if I'm going to invest anything, I'm going to invest in me. And I want to encourage you to do that yourself. That's one of those lessons. Like, it's just paid dividends in the biggest possible way. All right, those are the lessons. Let me go through them again really quickly. Lesson 1, it's not always about loyalty. It's not what you think it is. And it's more about maintaining integrity and delivering at high results. Lesson 2, the what have you done for me lately? Not letting your ego come into business and your pricing, your offers, and all of that, and like figure out who's my buyer, what will they pay, and can I craft an offer that is going to be compelling to them? Lesson 3, compensation packages change. And I guess that's the one that I was talking about, ego. Sorry, I just tied that up a little bit. What have you done for me lately is more about prospecting and continuing to build momentum in the marketplace for you. Lesson 3 is the compensation piece. That is not letting your ego come in business and figuring out what will people pay and putting the offer out. Number 4, relationships trump everything else. They absolutely are the game changer. Relationship first, rapport always. I cannot stress how important that has been for me in my business. Number 5, promises without that signature or without that money, like that does not count as a sale. So if closing is a struggle for you and if you have a bunch of people who say they're going to buy and haven't bought yet, like there's ways for you to change that and start getting more commitments and getting them quicker. Lesson 6, run it like it's your own business. You got to advocate for your business as if it's an entity outside of you, even if it's just you selling your own expertise and services. You have to advocate for it. And that means you have to take care of it. You got to let it breathe. You got to, water, feed it, all the good things. And then lesson 7, communication is the superpower. It is the game changer, and investing in yourself is an investment always worth it, in my humble opinion. All right, those are my lessons. What are yours? Would you be willing to share? I would just love to hear. What is something you wish you had known sooner that now that you know it, it makes a big difference in your business? Reach out to me on social, reach out to me via email, however you prefer to share. And, share this podcast with somebody if you feel like these lessons are something that might help them in some way. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for listening. I am wishing you continued success in all that you do. Take care.